talking about the big board, I'll move over to that now. I thought we could go through our own big boards and kind of create a consensus between these.
Yeah,
So
I think that's a good idea. I think I'll just preface it with a couple of thoughts I had just around like, and again, we can agree to come up with a different strategy for this, but this is obviously Blazers specific for the
yeah,
big board. So this is not going just,
yeah.
I
If
guess,
we were the Blazers scouting and GM department,
yep.
this is who we would have on our big board, like you said. And I think we're probably both going to have some similar thoughts about not drafting small guards because of that.
Yeah, and I'll just say along those lines, like where you might find a Jacoby Walter or Reed Shepard or even a Topich or something in this draft, like I just didn't include those necessarily in my big board because
You need to.
they're going to go much higher than like what I would have them for the Blazers, right? So like
Yeah.
for instance, if Reed Shepard is slated to go fifth or sixth, I might have the Blazers taking him in like the late lottery if he was still available, but
Sure, sure.
teams are going to have selected him by then. So
Yeah,
that's
if
kind of
Rob
how I feel.
Dillingham or them are
Yeah, exactly.
available by 14,
Yeah,
I'm going to take them, but I'm also not going to take like Devin Carter at 14.
yeah,
Like
exactly.
that's too early. But I would
Exactly.
definitely take him or what's the Jalen Brunson clone?
Mark Sears, yeah.
Yeah, like I would take them in the second round.
Oh, easily, yeah.
Yeah. So
I have no trouble. We just have to like, I mean, as much as it is best player available, like in the lottery, especially top 10, top 7, 8, especially, it's just one of those things where, I mean, we have Scoot. Like
yeah.
you either have to make the decision to
And
move on from
Simon
Scoot
still.
and Simons and Sharp. So
Yeah.
if you're selecting a guard, which one of those guards do you want to,
Yeah.
like really restrict the development of, right? Because they're just not going to get the minutes. So that's how
Yeah.
I thought about it. But
Yeah. I'm definitely very wing and um I mean, really all wings except for a couple
like
players that can play the
versatile big
four
man.
and the
Yeah.
five. Yeah. So um, everyone saw that my first pick on my big board would be Alex Sarr.
Yeah.
I think he has the not just immediate impact at a position of need for the Blazers in particular, but he's probably for anyone in this draft seems to be, I compare him to a Jaren Jackson Jr. or an Evan Mobley. I like the idea that he can play the four. I think that's the big if. I don't like
Yep.
him as much if he's not a four because I actually am fine with keeping Ayton the way that he finished this season. I wouldn't want to draft Sarr as his replacement. I would want to pair them together and have a thing that Portland hasn't had for 6 years, a good defense.
Yeah.
But similar to like we just talked about Evan Mobley, like they're having some problems because he can't shoot or won't shoot or isn't just good or not good enough now. Sarr has been talked about as a shooter, but so far, hasn't really shown it. I mean, I think his form is fine, but
Yeah.
man, he moves so well for his size. He's probably at least 7 feet. I know he's listed at 7'1". We'll do this again after the combine, of course.
Yeah. I was going to make that point. We don't have
Yeah,
combine
so
stats
because
yet.
there's a lot of these other guards or wings that, I'm not sure their height is true,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, he has pretty good ball handling. Like you've seen some clips of him in the open court dribbling. So I think that's still he may not be that sexy of a pick as like a big scorer or anything, but you can project him as I think at minimum a good defender at the 4 and the 5.
Agreed. Yeah. I agree with all your points. I think, yeah, we'll have to see what his measurements come in at the combine. I mean, he doesn't have overly impressive stats. So I guess I'll preface this again. Maybe another quick note about the draft process is like there's been so much variability in the mocks from like the pundits for this draft that you you always hope that it turns into like a clear couple prospects that really kind of rise above the level of everyone else. And this draft from like, I mean, it seems like Sarr's been the one to really kind of be a consensus top 2 to 3 pick. But beyond him, there's just a lot of variability. And
Yeah.
so you hope that this is not like a 2001 Kwame Brown draft or 2013 Anthony Bennett draft, but with how much
No one else
variability
is
is,
taking Anthony Bennett #1 though.
yeah,
Or
that's
Brown.
fair. That's
Yeah.
fair. But like even that draft, I mean, there was some good. Obviously, Giannis was that draft. CJ was that draft. But like
Yeah.
there wasn't a clear top consensus. I mean, you might have said Oladipo should have gone first that draft, but this draft, there's so much variability in the mocks that I was hoping that by this point we'd have more, you know, clarification around who might be that top 5. And it's
Yeah.
just it seems more kind of in the gray than ever. So I agree with your pick here. I think Sar is a good fit for any team. I mean, he just his length and what he can do off the dribble, I would say, from the 3-point line. I mean, he can really attack. He's
Yeah.
shown, while the stats really don't, they're not spectacular, he's shown the ability to attack. He's shown the defensive versatility to play spot 5, as well as be that versatile 4 that you can pair with like an Ayton, probably honestly pretty well. So I think that's probably that's probably a fair pick. We've seen guys like LaMelo come over from an Aussie league and do really well. So that also lends itself to, I feel like being a strong top 2 to 3 pick. That's a league that's pretty physical. And so I feel like, yeah, that for a lot of teams, I feel like Sar would be the pick.
Yeah. I think he's in this draft too seems a little safe.
Yeah.
Like you're like worst case scenario, he's going to be, a decent defender athlete, like
Yeah.
who could, God forbid, be a bench player, a solid bench player that can, in some ways, even though it's haunting, and I'm like, well, if he is what we wanted Zach Collins to be and more athletic, then that would be fine.
Yep.
Even if the ball handling part doesn't really develop, but hey, he can hit threes and he's great on defense and he can switch. He has some switchability. Like that would be awesome.
Agreed. Yeah, he's really versatile, so I think that puts him over the top for me.
Who's your number 2?
I still think I would go Risache.
Yeah, same.
I realize he's dropped a lot because in the last couple of months of the season, he kind of regressed to the mean for his 3-point shooting. So he was shooting really well through like the first half of the season. And then I think he shot like in the low 20s, like maybe 24, 25% in the remaining couple months of the season in the pro French league. So yeah, it's really tough. He's also, I feel like he possesses such a nice skill set, right? Like he can shoot off the dribble. He has the ability to be a good defender. He possesses the tools to be a really like positionally versatile player. The fact that he can both spot up and shoot and then shoot off the dribble is just, ideally what teams look for in the draft now. Still really young and only 19 years old. So I still think the ceiling puts him at number 2 for me, right behind Sar. I could even make the case for him going 1. He's 6'8", has like, it seems like he has a frame that could at least fill out. Like he's really slender, but he doesn't have, like he's not skinny like a Chet Holmgren or a KD when he came into the league. Obviously those guys worked out, but like sometimes the really lanky frames are just, you don't really see how they might be strong enough to be a good defender. I think he's still the pick for me just because of all the, the toolbox that he has.
Yeah.
He's even shown some playmaking and, so.
Pretty good ball handler. Yeah.
Yeah. Pretty good ball handler and the ability to just kind of like work through the offense in a pro level setting outside of the G League. Like that's pretty intriguing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And one thing you didn't mention, at least, or if I missed it, but he's a really good defender already.
Yeah.
Which is like like you said, his athleticism helps, his size helps. I don't think he's really 6'10", he's probably 6'8", but that's really good size for a small forward. And Blazer fans, we haven't had a legit small forward, even like a 3-and-D guy. Like it was either Norm Powell, who was 6'3", or Mo Harkless, who couldn't really shoot. So it's like, it'd be nice, even if he's just projects as a 3-and-D guy as a starter, like that's really valuable.
Really valuable. Yeah.
I'm on the extreme end of like, I'd rather have a really like Mikal Bridges or something who's not an all-star versus a lot of all-star point guards in terms of
definitely
importance to the team.
In this type of draft, if he turns out to be Mikal Bridges, that's a huge win. So and that's like prime research. Like if that's the player he turns into in prime, like that's a really good pick, I feel like. So, and that's just something that every team can use. So yeah, I'm pretty comfortable taking him there. I know he's dropped a lot in mocks though.
Yeah, I watched a few of his last game highlights where they actually show the misses. And it's not like his form was different or anything. And
Yeah.
like they're still popping in and out. He's not airballing things. I think sometimes players just go through a slump, and that's one problem with the European season. It is a shorter season, so when you have like a 5 game slump, that can really impact your numbers. But he still ended up shooting for the entire year like 38%. So it didn't drop all the way down. His free throws, like you mentioned, a little concerning, but yeah, I would definitely have him at number 2. I think this is where it gets more interesting for us.
Yeah. Who would you take at 3? I'm curious.
So
Again, this is again, folks, this is Blazers specific. So
yeah, I I- he I didn't like what I saw at the end of the year, but Cody Williams would probably still be it.
that's who I have. That's who I
Like
have.
if he can be 90% of his brother, but a little bit taller, that would still
Yeah.
be an awesome player. And I think
Oh man.
Mike Richmond, who does the Locked On Blazers podcast, he was basically saying like, he's like, Jalen Williams is probably going to be like all NBA at some point, like he's really good. So if Cody
Yeah.
Williams is just 90% of that, you take that. And he is younger, like his brother came out when he was a junior, I think, right? So
Yeah.
you're hoping for a similar progression. But yeah, is that who you had as well?
I did, and I kind of went back and forth on that one. Again,
Yeah.
we're
Let's see
obviously
who
in
your
the
fourth
wing.
one is.
You want to take best player available, but you want it to still kind of fit your team. The thing I like about Cody Williams is he's shown to be like quite a playmaker, like
Yeah.
kind of like Sachet, but he is a fluid ball handler for sure. Like he knows how to be more of like a point forward, I would say, that even though he's a lot of times at Colorado playing off the bench. Um,
Well, they have another good small forward there that may also be on your list. So
He definitely is that,
yeah.
and so he's not the shot maker of somebody that just like a Brandon Miller that just came into the draft, but like,
Or even his brother who turned into
or even his brother, right?
Yeah.
Like, and he wasn't even known to be as much of a shot
No.
maker, I think, but like
No.
he just shows a lot of the tools necessary to be like that next level wing at the pro level. So again, if this is not a strong draft and you still get a, like rookie season, you still get, 12, 4 and 4 out of a guy like that on decent
Oh
shooting
God, that
splits.
would be awesome. Yeah.
Like I think you're, that's a win. So
He's
I
a-
mean, I think
he's
12, 4
yeah.
and 4, I think in a lot of drafts is not like a huge win as a
No.
top 3 player. But like if you say he shoots 43 and 34, 35 from downtown on 12, and plays good, plays defensively versatile for the Blazers, I think that's a big win. So I still have him there. He just possesses too much height and too much like early season promise for me to move him out of top 3.
Yeah. And they were a good team. And so he wasn't relied on to score. And so his scoring numbers were really low. But, and I actually think of 6'8", he's probably closer to 6'8" than 6'6" for sure. So like
I hope so.
He looks
Yeah.
big. It's not
Yeah, he
like
does.
Reece Sachet, I don't think is 6'10", for example. Like that seems
I think he's
tall,
6'8". I think Reece
yeah.
Sachet is 6'8".
Like a legit 6'8". But yeah,
Yep.
so I'm with you with Cody Williams. He's the prototypical small forward that you're looking for, that can switch between 2, 3, and 4. And already a decent shooter and then has those other pluses. So we'll agree on that. All right. Number 4, I think maybe this is where it gets interesting.
We might split on this one. So I had Dalton Connect as the fourth pick. I know, again, we talk about Tumani being, almost 24 now. Dalton is 23. He's going to enter the draft as obviously an older rookie. But I like, with this draft especially, I was really impressed with his late season play into the tournament. They obviously made a nice run in the tournament, and he was just at the crux of it all. Like his offensive display, all the way into what did they make it to Elite Eight, I think, right?
Yeah.
So, I like him as a really good shooter outside, that Scoot can distribute to. He's obviously going to be hunted defensively, probably. You hope he can make some strides as a wing. He's a little bit shorter, I think, probably generously 6'6". So you hope that he can make some strides defensively and not be hunted as a wing, because you just don't want to have Like you don't want to have a starter wing level player that is like hunted defensively, especially when your guards aren't great defensively. And you know, Aiton's a solid front court defensive player, but from the wing position, especially, you don't, you know, you want to, if it's not a point of attack defender, you want them to at least be semi-reliable. So
Yeah.
you hope he can just take those offensive skills as a shooter. He obviously shot really well from three. He really knows how to move off the ball really well, I felt like, which we haven't had in a long time. And he seems like a winner to me. He does a lot of things. He's a really versatile player. So, and just that pull-up jump shot was just like buttery smooth through the tournament. Yeah. So it made me, honestly, pre-tournament, he's probably like top 8 for me. And then after the tournament, which you probably shouldn't do, I have him as my 4th player.
We're all guilty of recency bias, which is why I think the Reese Shea and Sarr and Cody Williams is, you know, we're kind of going against their trend at the end. So I didn't have Connect. I had him at 6, so not too far off. But I agree with you. I think at worst he's Duncan Robinson. The shooting off the dribble would be my only question offensively that he can contribute, but I think right away he can be a spot up. But you'd want him to be more of a spot up shooter, or sorry, more than a spot up shooter. You know, moving in there, like the comparisons I had was Duncan Robinson and Max Strus, which seems to be pretty common. And it's not.
I think that's exactly what the Ringer has him.
I think I know they haven't. I think they have Max Strus for sure. I don't know if they have Duncan Robinson, but
maybe not. Yeah.
But hopefully, you know, those guys are good. They're fine. They're rotation players. Max Strus even starts, but they also were not drafted originally.
But yeah. And I think that's fair. I will say the thing that I think puts Dalton above those guys is that he actually can take it off the dribble. Like Max Strus is not like take it off the dribble type of player. He's also
bigger than Strus, I think.
A little bit. I mean, Strus is really strong. He's played really well for Cleveland this year, but I think his Dalton's ability to take it off the dribble, and then also like he in the tournament especially, I made a special point to like kind of pay attention to his finishing. He was finishing in traffic.
He finishes well. Like he dunks on people. Every once in a while. Yeah.
He's more physical than I would have expected, honestly.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping. And that's why I think he probably won't be that bad at defense. I think it's when you just have all the weight on you as an offensive player, like you know, and he's the type of guy who's running his ass off on offense. Yeah. So it's not like, I like that he's versatile and that, like, he can handle the ball, but he also moves off the ball really well.
Exactly.
I think for someone like you mentioned, like Scoot, like he could come in right away. Now, again, if he's 6'6" versus 6'4", and he looks bigger, he doesn't.
Oh, he's not 6'4". He's got to be bigger than that. Yeah.
But so he's 6'5" at worst. Like you can play him and Sharp together, for example, with Scoot in the backcourt, and you're not, it's not that bad. But yeah, I will say I would be kind of disappointed to take him as our, if that was our first pick.
I agree. It wouldn't be the like flashiest pick. I agree.
My number 4 was, this is a stretch, but Tinjon Salone. I had him there because like he's the Giannis like, big reach type. And I just wanted to, like, hey, if he's available and these other guys are gone, like I feel like, okay, he's a 4 that maybe can play some 3. He's big, he's still growing. He's shown a lot of the good fundamentals, but he just hasn't played enough basketball. Like, let's just take a shot on him. And then, you're still going to have your 14th pick where you could take someone who's a little bit more, like I would hate if he went 13 and we had the 14th pick, it's like, I'd rather just take him at, say we're outside of the top 3, I would take him at 4 or 5 pretty easily, depending on if Sarr, Reese Shea, or Cody Williams was not gone. So that's kind of how I was like, I'll put him at 4 because after those 3, I feel like he's the guy that has a lot of upside.
I love the pick, and I had him at 6.
Okay.
So we basically flipped.
We haven't tried.
Yeah, I love Salone. I was just watching highlights of Salone, and he is your boomer bust type player, right? So
he's
like
a little robotic right now, I think.
He doesn't have a lot of game, I feel like, off the dribble. Like his shot is actually pretty pure, I feel like. Like I don't think he shot it well previous to this season. But again, I feel like I feel like if you're that young and then you're displaying that you can at that pro level, I feel like that's a really good sign.
Yeah.
And then just the defensive tools. I would not be happy, honest. Or I would not be mad if we took Salon over Connect, if like that's what the Blazers front office and the brass feels like is a better pick.
Yeah.
I would not be mad at that. I mean, he's really big. He possesses a lot more of that like defensive skill set that we could really use and a lot of teams could really use.
Yep.
So that would be, yeah, that's a really intriguing pick. And I would honestly be pretty excited if we got him. I hope that
there's
like
a lot of intrigue.
if we have like a pre-draft workout with him, I hope it goes really well, honestly.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of who I had him. Oh, my only note was the Giannis flyer, a project. That was my
Yeah,
note.
yeah.
I know he won't be Giannis, but you're also it does just feel like, I mean, he's already an athlete, which is, as I say, you can't teach that.
Yeah.
You know, and like, yeah, his 3-point shot looks fine. So he has some skills to lean back on while he develops the other thing, which is, I think we talked about that with Scoot. Is like he's pretty good at a lot of things, but he just didn't have like one thing that he wasn't the most athletic guy like Sharp was, you know, he doesn't have a great shot. His pull up is decent. You know, he's a good passer, but we don't have any shooters. So it's kind of like made it harder for him. And when you have like a skill and you can come in and just rely on that, I think it makes it a little easier. So who is your number 5 then?
One more point on Solana. Give me like more athletic Cam Johnson from Brooklyn.
Yeah.
That's what I'd like him to be. I mean, honestly, if he's a little bit better than like Kamara rookie year, that's a huge win. Like I feel like
I don't know. I mean, I think he'll be, if he gets drafted, he probably won't play much his rookie year. Like I think he's going to be 18 at the time of the draft.
Oh wow, yeah.
I think he's the youngest player in the draft. So
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Yeah. I don't usually like, but since we were already so bad, it's like we might as well. Yeah. So yeah, who'd you have at number 5? Because
I texted you about this earlier. I have Stephon Castle.
Oh yeah,
UConn.
I had him at 7.
Oh man, what a tournament though! And again, recency bias. Still just 19. I mean, he did a little bit of everything in the tournament. And when I look back at some of his highlights earlier in the year, it wasn't a whole lot different. He's a little bit undersized for what you want him to play at, right? Like again, we'll see what the combine reveals.
6'4".
Where are you seeing he's 6'4"?
Well, I just think that's what he is. And he's listed at 6'5", but it's like, just watching him, he doesn't seem 6'6".
Yeah, I'm seeing him at 6'6" on a couple sites, Ringer included, but
does he seem taller to you than Terrence Shannon Jr.?
He seems about the same height to me, but
we'll see. Terrence Shannon Jr. is like 6'5.5" with no shoes, so that would be good.
I mean, the thing that I really liked about him is that he forces the game to his own pace. Yeah. I mean, you know, those in the final
who's
4.
Your comp for him?
Oh man, that's a good question. I
had Marcus Smart and Alex Caruso.
Oh, Alex Caruso. That's an interesting
well, because I'm hoping he's a better shooter, you know, but like someone who's like literally just, you do not want him guarding you. You hate it. And they're actually good at defense. Not like just a gnat, but like,
yeah,
he's a little more athletic than Smart, I think. So like, and Alex Caruso is pretty athletic, but you're hoping he's bigger than both of those guys. And that would be, you know, again, you have something to hang your hat on. Those other skills can come along a little easier. That's kind of my hope.
I just feel like
that's his best where he is, but I think those players are pretty good comps.
I feel like he showed a lot more offensively than either of those guys. I just was really, really impressed with both his range. I know he hasn't shot super well from 3. But I mean, I think if I'm remembering correctly, he shot really well for like the last couple of months of the college season from the free throw line, which is always a really good sign. Again, he's young. He just showed like at that age, that level of leadership, and that whole UConn team led by Dan Hurley, that the whole team was just awesome. But I mean, I just thought he showed like a little bit of everything. I need to come up with a good comp for him. I think he shows more.
Caruso this year saw 40% from downtown on 5 attempts and 47%. I mean, he averaged 10 points.
Yeah. I just think he's more than a 3-point shooter. Or
like I would also, yeah. Shooter. I mean, I don't think he's a 3-point shooter at all right now, but I think you'd want him. Like if he's legit 6'6", and he's your point of attack guy, like
Yeah.
you can live with his size not being 6'8", like he looks strong. He's got
I
those
mean,
bow legs, kind of like Norm,
the ability to take people off the dribble too. Like
Yeah.
again, that's not something I saw like earlier in his career. So he showed a lot more of that. And again, he was just like the engine that could for that UConn team. I felt like they would, when there was a bucket needed, he would like get a floater. A bucket needed, he'd hit the three. Like, so I think there's just something to be said when you're going to that next level with that type of player. So I would feel very comfortable taking him again if he measures out. If he's
Yeah.
6'4", that's a lot tougher ask.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like everyone's saying, like he's probably going to be a point guard. It's like,
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
If he's a point guard, no. Like it's
yeah,
just yeah.
exactly. So, well, my cat just stepped on my keyboard and ruined my window. But my fifth pick, again, this is controversial and it's more of looking for just like not a diamond in the rough, but just like pure ceiling. And it's going against my better judgment, but I had Ron Holland.
Yep.
And I just think, I watched him enough that he appears to be he can pretty much do everything but shoot. And
Yep.
his shot doesn't look that bad. And I know it's hard to tell, like, as I put in my notes, the G League is unscoutable because you just don't, or at least the Ignite, like you just have no
Yeah.
idea how good someone is. Because you mentioned the Scoot versus Wemby game, which actually wasn't Summer League, but it was the G League Ignite game versus his French team. And
Yeah.
like he looked awesome in that game. And then also this summer, like SAR's team played the G League Ignite, and like he looked awesome. And it's like, oh, I hope they are. But my comparisons for Ron Holland was, well, I think Kevin O'Connor had, was it Harrison Barnes and theoretical Josh, what was his name?
Josh Jackson.
Josh Jackson, who just never,
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Yeah. I think Holland's a really good pick.
yeah, so let's see. My comparison was open up here. I think this is my last one that I wrote.
I have an easy comparison, so I'm
I said
excited.
probably my notes were probably isn't 6'7". Can he ever learn to shoot? Seemed to have a little bit of everything else though, but the G League Ignite have been unscoutable comparison. So these aren't good comparisons. Hamadou Diallo, if you remember him,
Yep, I remember him.
Nasir Little. So he's kind of similar body type, like really athletic. He's a little leaner than Nas, but hopefully taller. Although a couple of the local guys who saw him play when he played the Rip City remix said they're like, there's no way. He's listed at 6'8" on their site. He's like,
I
there's
don't
like,
think he's that big. No.
if he was 6'8", yeah, easy. Even if he's 6'7". But yeah, who was your comparison for him?
I mean, a really recent one. I'm hoping he can be like an Amen Thompson,
Yeah,
right? Like just that versatile, again, Renaissance type player that can finish in contact. I think the one thing about him, and I hate to use this as because it's so cliche, but he has a really good motor, right? Like he does seem to play just really hard all the
yeah.
time, which I know it like that's not necessarily like a physical tool,
But you
but
can't
man,
teach
it
another
sure
thing you can't teach.
it's another thing you can't teach. And it's like, yeah, it's something where the player has it or they don't. And he seems to really play hard, which I think also speaks to if he's playing in the G League and if he's playing in the G League and he's playing that hard, I still like that, right? Like I think a lot of guys
Yeah.
that play for the G League, they're collecting the check and they're not net, they're kind of, like here's my potential talent type of player. I like the fact that he, really has a lot. He's just not a shooter, but like all the defensive skills are there. If he comes in at size, like if he's at 6'7", I think he moves up my board a little bit. I have him in a very similar range. I had him in my I had him in the 8th spot. So I really do like him there. I think he's a solid player. I mean, he just a season ago he was the projected first pick, right?
Yeah,
So
exactly. And there has to be something there that people
there
saw.
has to be something there. So I feel very comfortable taking again another player, and this is all within that range. Like really after 3 and Cody, I would have any of these guys relatively interchangeable, just depending on their measurements and then how they stack up at the combine.
Yeah, and you're hoping rumors and kind of getting a lay of who wants who. with the Blazers having 2 picks, if they indeed keep them, is like, well, we can get this guy here, or we can have a pretty good chance of also getting,
Yeah,
14. Like
yeah.
those type of guys. All right, so I don't know what the last one I asked. Have we got? Are your top 7 here?
Uh, yes, they are. Yes, they are.
Okay.
The one I have, yeah, the one that's pretty interchangeable for me is, and again, I know we've talked about this one, and it's like the Edey versus Klingon comparisons. Like it was just a weird tournament for big men. Like
Yeah.
Edey showed so much, like all the way into the final game, and he had a monster game against UConn as well. I did when I went back and looked at Donovan Klingon highlights, the center for UConn, obviously. I did like a lot of the tools. I know we've said he's not necessarily a Walker Kessler type.
He looks so slow. Just
He does
so.
look slow, but I will say it's like 7'7", 7'8" wingspan. I
Yeah.
think he's a true like 7'2". He actually, I think, could shoot it a little in high school. I don't necessarily know if it's something he's ultra comfortable with. Obviously, wasn't at UConn, but maybe he can develop into a little bit of that. He is pretty slow. You're right. I do think the one thing that we know about from college to the pro level is that shot blocking almost all. It's like the one skill
Yeah.
that almost always translates.
Do you think Klingon could be like, is Rudy Gobert? Is that the ceiling?
Yeah, I think probably not to that level, honestly, but even like a Kessler type, although you've talked about specifically how Klingon just hasn't been the most fleet of foot. So you hope that he can develop a little bit of a pick and pop game as well offensively, but I'm really confident in his rebounding and shot blocking abilities at the next level. And I just think again, he was an anchor for that UConn
Yeah.
team. You hesitate to move him up so much in a draft from Turney alone, just like Connect. But I do feel like he showed a lot, and that back-to-back UConn team was something to be said for that. So I still like him top 10 for sure.
Yeah, I see him. I think it's funny. They're like, oh, he gave Edie a lot to handle. I'm like, Edie scored 37 points. I'm
Yeah,
like,
he did. Yeah, he did.
he got
Yeah.
tired, but like at the same time, he probably won't be guarding guys like Edie. They're like, again, I think this was Mike Richmond locked on. He was just like, Edie literally just like turns over his left shoulder and a little hook shot or flick shot.
Yep.
That's his move,
Yep.
but it is disconcerting that he could do that as successfully as he could, even against Klingon, who's made me think of the second or even maybe the first best center in college. And, I know it'll get smarter, but he may just be Walker's similar too. I mean, there's not that many good on ball centers, defender centers. Like it's a lot of help defense and clogging up the lane, and that's fine. So I just worry it's like these days there's enough Jokic and Embiids that you do have to have a little bit of better on ball. But yeah, I don't have him in my top 18.
Okay.
I would not take him, but a lot of that is like what you said, the Blazers with Ayton, with Robert Williams if he comes back. And then I do have a couple guys in my list that are like, 4s and 5s. So like obviously if you got Sarr, he would be a backup center de facto when he's not, starting with them. And then we'll get to a couple of the guys a little bit later. So my number 8 is also a big kind of stretch that's just based on his pre-season ranking, because
Yeah.
before he played G League, he was higher. And I have my comparisons are not really very good. But it's Matas Buzelis.
Okay.
And I think his shooting has been really bad, but coming in, he was known as a shooter. And I just have to feel that would get better. And I do think he's a legit like 6'9", probably.
Yeah.
So the worry is I don't think he'll ever be a plus defender. I'm hoping he's not a Poku type, right? Like he's better than
Yeah.
Pokuševski. But he has for his size, really good ball handler. He's got a nice touch. He's decently athletic. I don't know how much more weight he could add on, but I like the idea of like a real big small forward or someone who could also play. Like I'm thinking of him as maybe a little Markkanen type.
Ooh, that's okay.
I mean, not as big, but probably a better ball handler. but I think, you just get that guy on the wing and he can shoot. And then when people crash out, he's just tall enough and quick enough to get to the basket and have make a little bit of trouble there. So he's probably higher than most. I, prefer to take him at 14 and not at whatever 1 through 6, whatever we end up at. But
Yeah. I
when I look
I
at the other options below him, I'm like, yeah,
I have a fear, and I have a comp for this. I have a fear with him around just like I haven't when I watch him and some of his like strengths and weaknesses, I have not been impressed with his ball handling and at his like I know he's really tall and even as a catch and shoot shooter, like you have to bring other tools as a catch and shoot big man, no matter what, right?
yeah,
Like you have to bring interior post presence, you have to be a versatile defender of some type, like either on the post or on the perimeter. My comp for him, and this is not a good comp, right? But it's like Dragan Bender type, right?
yeah,
Like
yeah. He's not quite
um
as tall, I guess,
he's
but
not as tall. He's not as I think
but
Dragan is
Bender
like
was
6
supposed to be more than just like a center,
He
defensive center,
was. He was. And maybe that wasn't the ideal scenario or the ideal situation for Dragan, but
Yeah,
and he showed a little bit, I guess, in his career. I just that's my fear with him. Like
yeah.
outside
No,
of
I
shooting,
get
and
you.
he wasn't a great shooter this season
No, but that's what I'm saying is that his before he came into that was like he's supposed to be a good shooter. So I'm
yeah.
just, hoping that my ceiling comp would be like Hedo Turkoglu, something like that. Like
Yeah.
pretty tall, pretty good ball handler, probably not as ever as good of a playmaker, but
Looks exactly like me.
yeah,
Got it.
exactly. Yeah, Kirk Heinrich. Um,
Nick
yeah.
Collison.
So yeah, him and Ron Holland, it's it's mostly you're just going with, okay, let's hope their ceilings are as high as we think and they can develop. But so did you
Yeah.
have it 8 or 9?
Okay, so for 9, I had and this is you talked about Cody Williams' teammate. I'm going Tristan da Silva.
Okay.
Um, and
I had him
again,
at 14.
okay, so we're not too far off on that.
No.
Like, again, I think he kind of climbed the ranks a little bit towards the end of the season. What I really appreciated about him and kind of his game is again, older player, but he like, I like his size for one. Like I mean, I think he's like maybe 225. Like, so he's not he's not a Reece Shea where he's coming into the league at like 205 at like 6'9", 6'10". I think he plays big to me, so he might only be 6'8". Hopefully he's like closer to 6'9". But he's a really good shooter. Like he's not very athletic, but he's a good, like I think he
I
shot.
don't I wouldn't say he's not very athletic. I don't think he's like elite athleticism, but he
I mean,
moves really
he's
well.
athletic enough. I wouldn't
Yeah.
describe him as
He's
like an
not like
elite.
explosive, you're right. But he like moves really well and fluid.
He moves really well. He was a really good spot up shooter. I think close to like 39-40% this year. Um,
Yeah,
Again, a bit of
40.
playmaking. Seems to be really competitive with that Colorado squad.
39% 3-point shooting for his career in college, which
Yeah,
means it wasn't
yeah.
just a fluke season.
So again, I just think it's one of that's again kind of thing that like I'm just not as afraid of now in like my history of understanding the draft now. I'm not afraid of taking someone that's a little bit older. I mean, we took Lillard. He was what, 22 when we drafted him.
Yeah.
Especially with how guys just don't stay with it's unheard of for a player to stay with their team their entire career now. I'm okay with taking a more seasoned
Get the best out
rookie
of him when you can. Yeah.
and just being like okay with it. He's a position of need. He's somebody that I thought played really, really well. And honestly, Cody Williams was a lot more inconsistent than Da Silva.
Yeah. Oh,
Um,
yeah.
so I thought he kind of acted. He was like probably the A level, the A scorer and player on Colorado this season. And so I thought he showed a lot and was probably the leader of that team. So I'm really comfortable with him as a wing in this range.
Yeah. I mean, he scored 16 points per game on 12 shots the last 2 years
Yeah.
in college. That's pretty efficient. You're shooting 50% overall, and then you're shooting 40% from three. A little bit of rebounding. And I actually think like he could play the three. He's probably more of a four, but we talked about a few guys, not this time, but just in the past of like Chandler Parsons. I think this guy's kind of a Chandler Parsons. He
Okay.
came out a little later, from Florida. and was just kind of ready to go. And because he was
Yeah.
a decent shooter and kind of had these other intangibles, like he wasn't very athletic. He was probably a little bigger than De Silva, but
Yeah.
like I mean, if De Silva's listed at 6'9", he's probably 6'8", so maybe he's an inch shorter, not quite as built. But
Yeah.
like, those are guys that can help. And I mean, Chandler Parsons looked like he could possibly be an all-star before, he got hurt. So
Yeah.
yeah, there's some stuff there. I like De Silva. I wouldn't be mad, especially at 14, taking him.
I almost think that like I used to think age was just something an older rookie is just something you can try to avoid. And now I
Yeah.
almost look at it like, okay, it's okay to have that experience. So it's
Yeah.
another reason why I'm pretty comfortable with them. Yeah.
I mean, the best players we've had since LaMarcus have all been like, I mean, CJ and Dame, for example, they were both in college for, I think CJ was 4 years as well. I mean, I know he got hurt one year, but
I think so. Yeah.
same with Dame. But yeah, it's
Yeah.
like there's things that you can learn at that level that are harder to learn at this level.
Absolutely.
And one thing I learned a lot over the last few years with just more coverage is like NBA teams, once the season starts, they don't really practice anymore. Like it's
Yeah.
recovery, and yeah, maybe the other guys are
Maintenance.
they're getting shots up and stuff, but it's not like in-game situation. Like that makes it harder to develop a little bit. I think it'll be better that we have the remix now because you can send young guys down and get some minutes there. But yeah, it's having a guy who already kind of has those fundamentals in them, or like, Shaden Sharp went to Kentucky, but he didn't do anything. And then the G League Unite, I think, is just a disaster in terms of coaching. It's just like AAU. Like those guys
Yeah.
didn't learn some simple things that are going to be harder to pick up in the NBA.
Yeah.
All right.
Absolutely.
So you had 10. Let's see. My 9 is Jacoby Walter.
Okay.
I
So you
think
went guard.
yeah, he's a little short, but I think I would look at him as like a shooter off the bench is kind of what you're
Okay.
getting from him. I don't particularly like him that much, but it seems that his talent, like a lot of people are like, okay, he didn't shoot that well at the end of the year, but he shows he's a good shooter. Like, I think that's maybe where you're finding him as like a 6 man or something like that. Like maybe not quite like a Malik Monk because
Yeah.
he's not like a point guard skills, but you could see him doing similar things. It's like, yeah, 10, 12 points off the bench when he's doing well, when he's older. So
He's from what I remember about him, he's a flashy player, right? Like he's gonna be that guy that comes in that has kind of that aura about him. I mean, like star potential, I think. I don't know if he'll get there. I tend to doubt it. Again, that combo guard type of label. But he does possess that I think he's pretty tenacious.
yeah,
He's a
he's supposed to be a good defender.
good defender as well. Again, I don't. What do you think? Again, we don't know combine. What do you think he's at? 6'3", 6'4"? Like, what do you think?
I bet he's like 6'4",
Okay.
maybe a little bit taller in shoes, but yeah, he has a big wingspan. He's not like sharp measurements, but
Yeah.
probably like closer to sharp height, like
Yeah.
6'4" is what Sharp was. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, again, so that's why you can bring him off, but he's not a guy I would ever look as like he's going to be the starting 3. Um,
Right.
I think you're just, yeah,
Are you maybe a good comp for him, like a Cam Thomas type, like lower scoring, but
maybe I think of him more as like oh, he starts for the Pacers now. He was on the Celtics.
Neesmith?
Neesmith,
Neesmith?
like kind of a
Yeah.
Neesmith,
Yeah. Yeah.
like he's starting right now. And Neesmith's a little bit more built, but
Yeah,
obviously
he is.
he's
Yeah.
older. But someone like that, like Neesmith's known as a really good shooter, but he can do a little bit extra. Like I don't think he'll be a starter long term,
Right.
but he's a good player.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
All right, let's see. Number anyone who's not in your this the top 11 who's not in yours.
No, that's captured everyone I have on the list so far. You got Klingon. Yeah, you got Klingon at 8. Next guy for me, and this is a coin flip for me. I think I'm gonna actually change this around in my big board list here. I think I'm gonna go Filipowski here. He was like
That's who I've got
okay.
at
I
10.
had him
He's
or
at 10 for me. Yeah.
Okay, so the other guy you're probably not even going to have on your list that I have there, and we'll get to him later. But I'm going to go Filipowski. He dropped off again in the last month or so this season. I still thought you hope that, and he's listed as a power forward here. You hope he can play that and be that versatile with like an Aiton type. Again, what I really liked about Filipowski is that Duke ran a lot of their offense through him from like the top of the key. And I mean, he showed the ability to knock down a three, at the top of the 3-point line from the corner. Showed some pretty good playmaking and passing, not again to like
he's a good ball handler. I was
obviously like a
surprised.
not even like a anywhere near like a Jokic level, but
No.
he's a big that can like you can hand him the ball on like a dribble handoff or pass it to him at the top of the key, and he actually knows what to do.
Yeah.
He knows how to pivot. He knows how to set a screen. He can hit a shot. Duke is a very obviously storied program, so to go there and have success, I feel like is always something I kind of pay attention to, because you just have that little bit of additional pressure.
Yeah.
It's not to say that it always translates, but I was pretty happy with his game this season. I had him even higher before the tournament, a little bit of a lackluster tournament and last couple of weeks there toward the end of the season with some poor shooting. But I still feel like even in the tournament, he showed like he had some real competitive like games and went toe to toe with some of the stars he was up against. So I'm comfortable with him in the lottery for sure.
Yeah. I think he just brings a different element. Like even if he's not a great player, like you bring him off the bench and now you've got your either center or power forward who can just be a kick out, or
Yeah.
your pick and roll at the top, and it just opens up more space for the point guard because the big man can't leave this guy, right? Because he can make that shot. And I thought he attacked closeouts really well. Like he
Yeah.
puts the ball down really well. You did scare me when you mentioned like what if he's Frank Kaminsky?
Yeah.
But I think Frank Kaminsky, like he had a couple years where he was 10 points and was hitting shots, and you just if he's a 10.6 rebounds guy for most of his career, I'm fine with that later in
Yeah.
the career, and hopefully he gets better at defense and you can play him. I mean, I think you could play him at the center against a lot of teams.
Yeah.
It's probably fine. Like I'm trying to think of
I
a
mean, he's big.
yeah, he is big, but
He's
he moves
7 footer.
well,
Yeah, he
but
does. Yeah.
they played him at power forward in college, so he's obviously
Yeah.
a little more used to that. But I think on offense, even if he's like only 36%, which I just feel like he'd be a lot better, it looks like it. But yeah, I like him because you just know he would fit in, and the Blazers just need shooting so bad at every position.
I'd like him to be, this is probably not a perfect comp, but when I look at his game, I'd like him to be like how Utah used him, Ahmet Okur. I know he played a lot at center.
Yeah,
And he was bigger, but just like that type of game, because I remember them distinctly, like with their offense, they would run through Okur quite a bit. And just that ability to hit that three. Yeah, so that's the type. I mean, we even had, like if like I think Ringer made the comparison of like Zach Collins if he was healthy. Right?
yeah,
So like
and can
that's
hit
another good
shots.
one where like Kevin O'Connor mentioned that, like where
I mean,
if Collins could stay healthy, like and you can play him at the 4.
yeah, they're not the best comps in terms of like they're great players, but like Kelly Olynyk or
Yeah, Olynyk.
Santi Aldama, is that his name?
Oh,
And
Santi Aldama, yeah, from
Grizzly, like
Memphis. Yeah.
like he can just. They're not ever going to be great players, but they give teams scouting problems, right?
Yeah.
Okay, well, do we let that guy just shoot and hope he misses, or do we give more space to
Yep.
Shaden Sharp and Scoot Henderson in the lane? You know what I mean?
Yep.
And
Yep.
also
Exactly.
it frees up DeAndre Ayton,
Yep.
on that elbow. Like you can have them both be in there. So yeah, I like that pick. All right. Now a lot of these next ones are more sleepers for me.
Okay.
Who did you have at 13?
Well,
Or
my next guy I had
whoever's
at like
next.
11,
Yeah.
because I didn't have Jacoby
Okay.
or I had Buzelis, but my next guy, and again, this guy's you're gonna be like too short. I still like him, Kevin McCullough Jr.
Is that the
Um,
Connecticut? Oh, Kansas.
Kansas, yeah,
Yeah.
Kansas.
He's not too short, is he? I thought he's like 6'6".
Yeah, they say six. I mean, I've seen 6'5", 6'6". Again, another older player. He's going to be, I think he's going to be 23 at the time of draft, but
6'7" on here.
Okay. Okay. So, I mean, I'll take it. Like, I know he has a decent wingspan regardless. He's been a
Yeah,
guy that's really developed his perimeter game. He's just like that quintessential high IQ player. I mean, he's
good
become more of a,
program.
yeah, good program, storied program. He can score the ball. He's a hard-nosed defender. And so I think I don't know if he'll be like a Jabari level, like do it all. I'm just coming in to just kind of fill my role. And I think he probably from the interviews, I would see him more of a like I actually want to be more of a
Role
top
player.
3, 4 scoring option on a team, a starter level player,
Yeah,
and someone that can actually have plays called for. But I can't see him being like a good wing player in the NBA, and I would not be disappointed if Blazers took him with like that Warriors pick if we got him right around there. Again, if all these guys were gone, I hesitate again. See what is like we've said it 4 or 5 times in this already. We'll see what his combine measurements come in at.
yeah,
Um, but he's a strong player. And again, I feel like for a Kansas program that's historically very good, he was kind of their A, and his ability to
yeah.
just kind of run that
I mean, they
offense.
were horrible without him in the tournament.
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. So
yeah.
I'm pretty comfortable with him there. What are your thoughts on him?
I didn't have him in my top 18, and
Oh wow, okay,
I don't believe the shooting is part of
okay,
it. And I work with a guy who's a big Kansas fan, or I guess I don't work with him anymore, but I did. And he said it was like seemed like nothing changed, but they were just going in, which
okay,
maybe that's good, but maybe that's bad. And I actually have Johnny Furphy ahead of him.
okay.
Um,
I mean, that's not the
yeah,
Johnny Furphy's much bigger, much taller. So
yeah, but again, I mean, second round for sure you take him, but he gives me a little bit of Chris Murray vibes, like, oh
okay,
yeah, he can shoot, and then he comes in and the other things were actually better than I thought, like with Chris Murray, but
yeah.
needed the shooting more than anything. But I wouldn't hate him, but the guys that kind of have above him that we haven't talked about yet, and maybe we can run through it since we're kind of at the end of the lottery.
Sure. Yeah. Let's run through them a little bit quicker.
Yeah, but yeah, that would be it. So I had my 11th was Jameer Watkins,
Okay.
small forward out of Florida State.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, really tough. Um, I'm gonna pull up his stats really quick. Really tough, kind of like he's a pretty good ball handler. I think you would like him because he gives me the what's the guy who doesn't want to fly? Royce White kind of vibes a
Oh
little.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
he's I think a junior. Let me just pull up these stats here. Sports reference. So he averaged 15, 16 points per game. Um, shot 34% from downtown on three assists, 6 rebounds. When I watch his highlights, he just reminds me of one of those guys that maybe like a Jaquez Jr., where it's like everyone knows he's good, but they're just not
Yeah.
sure how he'd really be. But it's like he just knows how to play. And again, he's already big and strong, which is fine. He's listed at 6'7", 210. He's probably closer to 6'6", but he has pretty good skills. Along those same lines, I also had Keyshawn George from
Yep.
my
I have him at 15.
yeah, he's six. I think he's a legit 6'8", maybe even
Yep.
6'9". He looks huge.
Yeah.
His shot looks pretty good. He's got some playmaking, but it's all very limited, like what he did. Even
Right.
though he's on the court a lot, but he looks like one of those guys that it's just a potential pick. Um, I do have Terrence Shannon Jr. at 13. Obviously,
Same.
based just on playing, not on the other stuff. But they do have his measurements. He was a legit 6'5" without shoes. So he's at least I would say 6'6" is a good measurement. Probably don't want him your full-time small forward, but I think he's a guy you could bring off the bench too and get some stuff out of. Let's see. I had De Silva at 14. We talked about him. Another big I had was Tyler Smith.
Okay.
I think similar to like Kyle Filipowski, he's a really good shooter. He's a much better athlete. People
Yeah.
say he's like a 6'10" small forward. He looks like a 4'5" to me.
Yeah. He looks, but yeah.
Yeah, he's a
He's
little
he's
too
a G League guy,
small.
right? G League.
Uh, yeah, Ignite.
Yeah.
But when people got really hurt, he was really good. I think he's hopefully not the head case part, but like a game similar to like Christian Wood a little bit. But he's
Yeah.
a smooth lefty jumper again. And it's like I'm overrating shooting just because we don't have any. Then I had Johnny Furphy. We talked about 6'9", probably like a playmaker type, like Joe Ingles probably is a
Yeah.
similar comp. I think they're both Aussies too.
Yeah.
Um, but like that would be good. He's got a pretty good shot. He just looks kind of clueless out there, so he's just raw. Jalen Tyson is another
Okay.
guy. He was a shooting guard at our small forward, whatever you want to call him, like 6'6", 6'7" at Cal.
Okay.
Big ball
Yeah. Yeah.
handler.
That's right.
Yeah, big ball handler. Kind of playmaker. He reminds me a little bit of Denzel Valentine, where he kind of did everything for the offense,
Michigan State. Yeah.
which didn't translate very well to the NBA, but I think you could give. And then the last guy I had, I went to 18, Justin Edwards, who was supposed to be a
Yeah.
lottery pick back in the day, but you look at his stats and he shot really well. He's a legit 6'6", maybe taller, really good athleticism. Feels like the type of guy you definitely want to spend a second round pick on, and just be like, yeah, you're an athlete and you can shoot. Like that seems like a good place to start. So
Yeah.
any guys that you had on yours that
Yeah, just I mean a couple repeats there, like Terrence Shannon, yeah, Mark Sears. Well,
yeah.
we briefly touched on him. I know the Jalen Brunson like comps. He's not going to be Jalen Brunson, but just kind of that level, that trajectory, right? I mean, on a Bama team that made it much further than originally thought. Another guy that just has a sweet shooting stroke. I kind of just stumbled on him today. Actually, was Khalil Ware,
Oh yeah.
um, Indiana.
The Indiana
So
center, and he's really
Indiana
athletic.
really
Yeah.
athletic. He can shoot it.
Yeah.
I mean,
I
you're
would,
talking
yeah. He'd be on my
turnarounds. You're talking, yeah. I mean, he's
yeah.
a shooter. And it's funny because you mentioned Christian Wood. I was hoping like Christian Wood, like a good Christian Wood, prime Christian Wood with maybe a little defense thrown in because he is a
Mhm.
somewhat of a rim protector. I would hope.
I mean, he's huge. I think he's 7 feet.
He's like 7. He's skinny, like
Yeah.
maybe
But he's
210,
not
two
like that
fifteen.
skinny, right? Like,
No,
yeah.
he doesn't look like a Chet by any means or anything, but
Yeah.
he's I mean he seems like he's good in the pick and roll.
He,
A little bit quite I mean his rebounding numbers were fine when I looked at kind of his some of video highlights, like seemed kind of have a little bit of trouble finding his man at times, kind of gets lost in some of the defensive schemes around him, but um yeah, I mean he's a shooter. Like he has a
yeah.
really good stroke. So I'm comfortable with him. I had him at 13 actually. Colin Murray Boyles, another guy. I think he was at I don't know if he's actually going to be in the draft. Honestly, he might. I think he's a freshman, but he might go back to school, South Carolina, for a sophomore
How
season.
was his last name spelled?
Murray Boyles, Murray dash
Got it. Got
Boyles.
it.
South Carolina, yeah. So really good defense. He's big. He's like 230, 235
You like more
pounds.
of a power forward?
I'd probably, you're probably looking at you're probably looking at I think of him almost like a bigger Royce O'Neal type.
Okay.
Hopefully he can develop somewhat of a shot, but like
Oh yeah,
really
I
good defender,
recognize
really
him.
versatile defender.
Plays a little
Just
bigger than his size.
plays a little bigger, but I mean he's got good weight for that. Like
Yeah.
he's not slender at all, I wouldn't say.
No, 6'7"
Not
power forwards aren't really that undersized these days.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Another guy, did you already mention you already mentioned Keyshawn or Keyshawn George from
Yeah.
Miami.
Yeah.
So that's another one. I think that's what I had in kind of my sleeper picks.
The one guy you when you were talking about Khalil Ware that reminded me of is Deron Holmes.
Oh
He's
yeah.
yeah, he's a similar type player, like rim protector, pretty athletic, but can really shoot the three.
Yeah.
Which seems like just tailor made for the NBA, like so. Um, I think that he would be a good. These are second round. A lot of these are second round guys, but I just like them in that mold of, hey, they play the 3 or the 4, or a wing that has some potential, and I think that's really what the Blazers need to look for. Now, one thing we haven't mentioned, and obviously as we get closer to the draft and we have more information from the combine and some rumors and blah blah blah, is like I don't think the Blazers keep all four of their picks, and they may
Probably
not
not,
even
no.
keep both lotteries. There's been some rumors of trading 14 to get our Bulls pick back. That like ideally that means that if if we if we win next year and we make the play in or the playoff somehow, like and we have the 15th pick, like is the
Yeah.
15th pick, that would normally go to the Bulls, but in the draft that's supposed to be a lot better, is the 15th pick outside the lottery in 2025 better than the 14th pick in the lottery in 2024? Yes, it probably is. You don't really know, but I think that'll be interesting. But I think this is a good start for us to talk about some of these guys, and maybe we can go more in depth. But it seems like we're pretty aligned in the first 10 or so, except for Klingon, probably.
Yeah, and Klingon's just kind of a throw. Again, I don't even think. I think
He's
maybe
getting
Klingon.
very high marks. Like I've seen him. Is it the Ringer has him at like 3 or something?
I don't. Do they have him that high? Okay, I didn't see
Yeah.
that.
So it's like,
That's really. I wouldn't have him that high.
yeah.
And
I
I
think he
should
has the
preface
Blazers.
it. It's
Yeah.
probably not like for Blazers top 10. I probably should say like that seems pretty high for Blazers, especially how we're stacked with. I mean, obviously we're probably going to move on from Rob Will, but with Aiton and Duop there and Moses Brown, even like we have a pretty stacked
Baji.
center. Yeah, and Baji, we have a pretty stacked. I mean,
Yeah.
not
You
great
can always
players, but
pick
like.
up a decent third strings or even second string center if you want.
And I know, like, I think it's Bill Simmons is always talking about like blowing top 10 picks on like rim running centers is never
Yeah.
something you want to do in the modern NBA. Like, even like a Derek Lively for the Mavs this year, right? Like, I think that
Yeah.
was a top 10
He's
pick for
like
the
not
Mavs.
even playing now in the playoffs
I
right
mean, he's
now.
like someone in the rotation in the playoffs, but Gafford is obviously taking his spot.
Yeah.
So,
And even Gafford's not playing that much.
yeah, exactly. So, you kind of want to be aware of that. I don't know, like, yeah, you
Yeah.
kind of have me honestly rethinking him in the top 10, honestly. But like I do think just the shot blocking, I know it's like I think he has a pretty high floor. So
And there's also some emotion that's involved of like if we took Klingon, even if it was at the 14th pick, you'd be like, okay. I mean, it's probably like he's going to be a good backup at the worst, but it's not
yeah,
sexy. Like
yeah.
Lisa Shea could totally just not be very good, but you're like, he's a 6'8" small forward who can shoot and play defense. It's like,
I I made note about that. Like when we talked about this, we talked about the modern NBA and just the versatility required. And that's why a lot of these guys 10, 15 years ago would not be this high. But I feel like even this is Blazer specific, obviously, but even from a general consensus, a lot of these guys are elevated just because of the position and their length, right? So
yeah,
like this is not a strong draft, but say like say you had a Ja Morant or a Zion or somebody that level player, like that guy's obviously at the top. And then a lot of these guys, just because of their measurements and
yeah,
like what they've shown, like even
prototypes.
intermittently
Yeah,
throughout their pro level season or their college level season, it's like, ooh, that guy should be a top 5 pick just because
yeah,
they're 6'9" and they've shown that they can like shoot off the dribble. So
yeah,
yeah, it's a hard. I feel like we kind of sacrifice sometimes what we've actually seen at some of with some of the players' history at college or even the pro level overseas or G League, and we sacrifice some of that for potential, which is natural, like but it's just really tough because a lot of these guys. I mean, you look at a guy like Cody Williams, who didn't even start a lot of the season. Alex Sarr certainly doesn't have crazy numbers. He's averaging like 9 and 4, so there's just a lot to say just about potential versus like the versatility requirements in the modern NBA.
yeah, yeah. No, I'm with you. And watching the Clippers Dallas game, and you're just like, I don't like him, like his attitude necessarily, but like just as a prototype for what like a wing player should be, Paul George is it.
Oh yeah,
6'8", guard skills, can shoot it, good at defense, like athletic, even after a huge injury. You're like,
yeah.
I want that. I
He
want a
was
6'7", 6'9", somewhere in that range, small forward that is a matchup problem and not on the other end. Like
and
it's
it's just so tough to judge because like yeah, like I mean, I had Cody and Zachary like top two for a lot of a lot of the season. I feel like I feel like I had Reese Sachet 1, and then Cody was. There was even I remember I think ESPN had an article about why you should take Cody Williams at 1 for a while.
Yeah.
So that like they've both had some times in their seasons where they've looked like a really good player and a next level prospect, and then they've had times when they've been a bit of a letdown. So it's a really tough draft to decide who you want to take with a top 5 pick. It doesn't seem to be. The more I look into it, the more I understand about all the pundits saying this is not a strong draft. And I think there's good reason for them to say that. I like to hope that it's like, what was the LaMelo Anthony Edwards draft? Was that 2019?
Yeah.
2020? Something like, I know that was not supposed to be a good draft at all. So I like to hope that somebody eventually becomes I don't think anyone's going to be an Anthony Edwards level prospect. That was to our conversation point the other day about him just not having a bit of a questionable motor.
I mean, that top 10 is pretty bad. You got
that top 10. Yeah.
Wiseman, Ball, Patrick
Yep.
Williams, who you hope can get
Bulls
Okoro. I mean,
Yep.
who just hasn't been great. On Okongwu, who you expect, maybe next year he finally starts. Killian Hayes, good God.
Yep.
Obi Toppin, he's fine. He's off the
Yep.
bench. Denny Avdia, he had a decent season.
Okay.
Jalen Smith. So that's the top 10. Then you have Devin Vassell, who's good.
And
You've got
Halliburton.
Tyrese. Yeah, those are good. But then after that, yeah, I mean, Neesmith, we mentioned. Kieran Lewis Jr. is even in the league anymore. Cole Anthony. I mean, there's a bunch of guys in here that are decent players. And you're hoping, with your 14 pick, you're getting someone like Sadiq Bey, maybe, or, Neesmith, someone who's really contributing. But yeah, there's nothing in here. CJ Ellaby, remember him?
Yep. Oh man, I forgot about him. Yeah.
Yeah. Like this was, I don't
State.
think Xavier Tillman or however you pronounce his name, is the only guy who really plays who's in the second round still.
He was supposed to be, wasn't CJ supposed to be the lefty Klay Thompson?
Yeah. I don't know if he's even in the league anymore. He always played like he was exhausted. So
yeah.
Cool. Well, last thing we should do before we leave, we have a couple minutes here, is let's just run a tankathon and see where we get. That's fun.
Okay.
And then, as we get closer, we can do some mock drafts.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Using tankathon, and we can revisit if maybe we just make our permanent draft board, like our top 30, something, and we can just replace it. All right, here we go.
Here we go. Let's go.
Okay. All right, let's go to the lottery. And okay, 14. And it looks like who's moved into the top, because if these guys all move down, someone's into the top. At least it wasn't our pick. Oh, there's a lot of movement. Okay, we went down to 6th.
Okay.
Sacramento up to 9. Oh, that would be
man. And Atlanta
up 9. Oh, I don't like this one.
This is not a good one.
No. All right. Well, hopefully better next week. All right. Thanks everyone for joining us, and we'll be back at some point in the future. No regularity. Cheers.
Sounds good. Thanks, G-Mac.